This video is in support of The Last Jedi, and I know that sounds crazy. There aren't too many videos out there that support this movie, and not many people like it, but I actually did like aspects of it. There are aspects of the movie that are poorly done, like the Canto Bight scene and the Mary Poppins Leia thing. That's clearly not good. But this video is in support of Luke Skywalker's arc, and hopefully explains to me how Luke Skywalker returned to legendary status. I think that the major theme in the movie is the balance of the Force, and thus far the Force has been something that only Jedi have and only Skywalkers have, and it's been something that is not really tangible to me. It's like a monarchy. All of the servants or the regular class, they have to look up to the monarch and know that even if they become the best person in the world, they're never ever going to become the king because they just don't have that bloodline. So there's something about a Jedi that's similar. If you're not a Skywalker, or if you don't have the Metachlorians or whatever, you can't be a Jedi, and because of that, I can't relate to the Jedi. But this movie here made me relate and feel as though like I've actually like used the Force sometimes. And there have been situations where in my life, you know, I was a competitive gymnast, and there were times where I did a skill. I don't even remember doing it. I had almost like a block. I didn't think that I could do halfway down the runway. I'm going to do the vault in 5 seconds. I don't even know what I'm doing, and boom, all of a sudden your body lands. It's like, how did I do that? And I believe that I use the Force. Michael Jordan uses the Force. Tiger Woods uses the Force, right? Everybody can use the Force. And what the Force is, really what Luke is saying is, and if you watch the movie, there are hints to it, nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. Luke Skywalker is not all good, all right? In fact, he became a legend because he killed his father, all right? He also had these fleeting moments of anger and things where he was going to chop down Kylo Ren or Ben Solo or whatever you want to call him. Not even Luke Skywalker is all good. Everybody has bad tendencies, but everybody can also have good intentions, and it's the balance of bad tendencies with good intentions that everybody has to kind of work on, and it's that connection between the two that is the Force. The Force is like this link between two organisms, and it's that thing in the middle. So I think that the Force is all about balance, and it's the balance of the Sith and the Jedi, and Luke and Snoke, and good and bad, and lucky and unlucky. But everybody has the potential to use the Force, and I think that this is the first time in the entire Star Wars saga that I had that opportunity or felt that way. So I'm just going to, I wrote a bunch of pages here and a bunch of notes. I'm just going to go through the notes. It starts at the beginning of the movie, and then we'll see where it goes. So in the beginning of the movie, with the whole bombing situation with with Paige, I think that in the Poe Dameron in the X-wing fighter, those two scenes were specifically setting up the fact that people aside from Jedis can use the Force, and there's two reasons why I think so. First of all, there was a close-up of Poe's eyes as he's in the cockpit, and I believe a close-up of your eyes like that means something. It happened 3 times in this movie. The first time was a close-up of Poe's eyes, the second time was a close-up of Paige's one eye, and the third time was during the first lesson. There was a pretty much a close-up of Rey's eyes. I think that means that there's the Force is being used, and just before Paige kicked down the transponder, you could see there was some type of connection between her and Leia or something like that, or Leia influenced that situation. In any event, I think that whole scene and the whole bombardier scene was there to show us that anybody, even Paige, can use the Force, and we've all used the Force before. There have been situations where you don't think that you can do something successfully, and then you really put all your motivation and all your effort into it, and all of a sudden you do it. And you do it really successfully. And sometimes I've tried to wonder how can that have happened, but to me, I think that we are able to use the Force. We're able to balance good and bad, and luck and unluck, and balance, and somewhere in between, and be able to use the Force. So Paige was using the Force, and we all can. And Poe was using the Force. We all can. There's a couple of parts about those scenes that I think were a little bit dumb, like the bombs. Apparently they were magno-charged, at least that's what the book says. And in regards to the joke that Poe made to General Hux about his mother and this and that, apparently, according to the book, there were new turbocharged engines on Poe's X-Wing fighter, and they needed to be recharged or something or other. So he was stalling and delaying, and so at least there's a reason for the joke. He wasn't just telling a needless joke. He had to wait until that turbo mechanism in the engine worked so that he could go on the bombing run and destroy all the cannons. So anyway, I don't want to get into a critique of much more. I just want to really talk about Luke Skywalker. Rey walks up to Luke Skywalker and holds out the lightsaber. As far as I'm concerned, that lightsaber means good things and bad things. For Luke Skywalker, maybe it's a symbol that he's a Jedi, but it's also a symbol that he killed his father. And the last time Luke Skywalker has a lightsaber that we see in the Return of the Jedi, he's chopping down his father, and the Emperor is laughing in the background. He says, "Yes, yes," and then Luke Skywalker realizes that he's using anger, and he throws the lightsaber aside. Luke's life has changed pretty drastically. He was going to be a moisture farmer, and then that day that Obi-Wan Kenobi showed him that lightsaber, that very first time he saw the lightsaber, his life bifurcated, and he went from a moisture farmer to arguably the most powerful Jedi of all time. The lightsaber to Luke Skywalker represents, a whole change in life. It also represents, tragedy, that if the fact that he was so conflicted, and if you think that Kylo Ren is conflicted, killing his father Han Solo, imagine how conflicted Luke Skywalker is at the funeral pyre. I mean, he's burning his father, and he must have been as conflicted as Kylo Ren. But for some reason, at the end of that movie, we all think that Luke Skywalker is really strong, the strongest, most powerful guy in the galaxy, but I think that there's a tragedy behind Luke Skywalker. And because of that when Rey hands him the lightsaber, I think that represents to Luke Skywalker is the beginning of the end. So Rey shows up, and the very first thing that Luke Skywalker says to her is, "Go away." And then he's in his hut, and before he even meets Rey, there's a scene that it shows that there's a kyber crystal hanging from a necklace, and then there shows the compass from whatever extended universe stuff they're referring to. But then it also shows Luke Skywalker is folding that white outfit that he uses at the end of the Force thing that he does with Kylo Ren at the end of the movie. So Luke Skywalker is folding that outfit. Luke Skywalker already knows that the end is coming. And what happens is he sees the lightsaber, and the lightsaber means that Rey is powerful enough to have found him. He sees the lightsaber at the beginning of the final act, and then as soon as he sees Rey, he says, "Go away." Like, go away. Doesn't want to see her at all. And because Rey signifies that it's time for Luke Skywalker to die, and I'll tell you what that means, but she seems like she's like sort of a grim reaper. He's definitely not happy to see her. In fact, he says, "How did you find me? Like, how did you find me?" He's like almost like surprised that she found him. And there's no real good answer. He says he goes to the most unfindable place in the galaxy. And the way that she found Luke is with the Force. And that's what he was banking on. I think Luke has this thing all planned out from the very beginning. And because she's the one who ended up finding him, it means that not only does she have the Force, but she's strong in the Force to have found him. One of the next scenes is it shows that there's a red kyber crystal hanging from a necklace in Luke's hut. So I think that, okay, where does he get this kyber crystal? Well, while he was chopping his father down and kills the Emperor and kills his father, he probably just took his father's lightsaber. So he's got Darth Vader's lightsaber after he chopped him down, and he's taken the lightsaber apart, and he's studying his father's lightsaber. Why is he doing that? Well, he's doing that because he realizes that maybe the Jedi aren't necessarily the right way to go. Maybe there is some naivete and also some vanity and maybe some, some of that, what do they call it, the dogma of the Jedi. Maybe Luke realizes that maybe the Jedi aren't all good. And just like everything, not everything is all good, but not everything's all bad. To me, it means that Luke Skywalker is learning how to use the dark side of the Force. The dark side of the Force is okay. And maybe one of the things that Luke Skywalker is learning from the Kyber crystal is, and the only reason that I would say this is because, to me, there's one thing that you can learn from the Sith that you can't learn from the Jedi, at least that we've already learned about, and that has to do with that creating life or saving or keep the ones that you love from dying. I think that's the quote. There's 3 times in the Star Wars kind of movies that you've seen somebody save another person from dying. Number one, well, the first time that you hear about it is obviously in that opera house scene. He says when Darth Sidious is talking about Plagueis. So they bring it up there, and then at the end of Revenge of the Sith, after Anakin Skywalker catches on fire, the Emperor goes over to him and touches him on the shoulder and keeps the ones that he loves from dying. So that's that skill that the Emperor was talking about. He knows how to do it. It's Darth Sidious learned everything from Darth Plagueis. So he used that trick. And then the next time you see that trick is with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine after Luke Skywalker gets, pushed down or whatever by those sand people. And you see Obi-Wan Kenobi just touches him right on the head, I believe. So Obi-Wan Kenobi knows that trick. I mean, maybe I'm overstating things, but it looked as though Obi-Wan Kenobi saved the person that he loved or wanted to save from dying. Obi-Wan Kenobi learned the trick. So to me, that means Obi-Wan Kenobi was also studying the dark side. So the dark side is reasonably okay to study as long as you can control it and balance it with the good. And then the next time you see somebody save somebody that they love from dying is when Luke is actually able to put his hand on the ground, shakes the rocks, and then is able to keep Leia alive. And that's when she wakes up and he becomes like one with the Force again. So to me, if that's the same skill that Obi-Wan learned how to do, which is the dark side, then it's okay to learn the dark side. And to me, it's just showing that that's a Sith skill that Darth Sidious taught Anakin, and eventually Obi-Wan Kenobi in his hiding on Tatooine learned that same skill. I think that's really important because Luke really is interested in learning from the dark side, so maybe the dark side isn't so bad. And then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe the Jedi is this dogmatic religion or whatever that isn't working. And maybe the reason that we love the Jedi so much is it's like the producers of Star Wars did it, and they're all like Jedi fans. So they wrote and produced Star Wars from a Jedi's like perspective, which obviously is going to make the Jedi look good and this and that, but maybe it's actually like the Sith way that's actually good, and it's not the Jedi who are good. So imagine if you could watch the whole saga over again, but from the Sith perspective. And I know I'm reaching a little bit right here, and I know people are going to have an issue with that, but at the same time, maybe the Jedi thing isn't so good, and maybe it's the balance between the Sith information and the Jedi information that's really the key. In any event, I think that the key is the balance of the dark side and the good side. And not only the balance of the dark side and the good side and the balance of the Force, but there's like another kind of balance. And it's not just the balance of the good and the bad, but there's balance of like Force power. And I think that it's clear in the movie that like Rey and Ren have this equal ability to use their side of the Force, which is why when they pull the lightsaber directly in half, it's an indicator that they're as equally as powerful as each other. So if there's this equality between Rey and Ren, there's also probably other equalities. And then the other connection is that Snoke and Luke are as equal as Rey and Ren are. So anything that Snoke can do, Luke can do as well. If Snoke is able to bridge people's minds, Luke is able to do it as well. So I start thinking that like maybe there's things happening that are behind the scenes here that were not originally just put out there, but maybe there's information that we can pay attention to. So Luke tells Rey that he went to the most unfindable place in the galaxy for no reason at all, right? Well, he went there for a reason. Luke is planning this entire thing. It's his master plan. He goes to the most unfindable place in the galaxy because he knows that if he's there and shuts himself off from the Force and somebody is able to find him, then that person is totally nasty with the Force. Is they gotta be special. So that's what he says. He says, "You think I came to this place for no reason at all?" Like Luke had the thing planned from the very beginning. Luke says to Rey, "So you think because I killed my father that I'm a legend?" When I think of a legend, I think of something like Paul Bunyan. And Paul Bunyan was this kind of like tall tale character who had this purple ox and would flip, huge gigantic pancakes or something like that. These out of the world things that he's able to do. And that's how a legend is made, through tall tales. So Luke is in his everyday life has these legendary activities where, yeah, he's milking that animal, and I thought that was kind of silly, but I thought the next scene where it shows him that he's stabbing that fish, I mean, he's able to use his Jedi abilities in his everyday life, so it's showing that he's still totally nasty, and it's setting him up to be this like relatable sort of person who needs to eat food and do all. He doesn't just sit there and meditate for his whole life. He's still a human being, but he's this like legendary character. So I think that if Snoke is bridging and feeling everybody's mind, the balance of the Force has got to say then that like Luke could be doing the same stuff. The next thing that I noticed is that it seemed as though, and this doesn't really have anything to do with much, but it seemed as though like Leia was able to anticipate with some type of like spider sense that she was about to get that the bridge was about to get destroyed. And the only thing that I'll say about that Luke Skywalker, that Leia thing would have been so much better if the bridge got destroyed and it showed that pan back to her floating through space with just her like theme music just going for a couple of seconds, and then it just cut right to the next scene. Maybe there was like a 2 millisecond black screen, and for the rest of my life I would be like, wow, Leia is just floating out there in space. And it would have just made it so there was no end to Leia. She was just like, she just keeps going and going and going, and then cut right to the next scene. The next thing I notice is that Luke Skywalker walks into the Millennium Falcon, and he's got this black robe on. The black robe is so symbolic in Star Wars. It's the very first scene that you see in The Phantom Menace with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi taking their robes off. So anytime you see a black robe, to me, in Star Wars, there's something special to it. It makes you feel as though, wow, this person is really special. And the only reason I mention it is because everybody's trying to figure out who the Snoke guy is. Remember in Rogue One, they use that black robe to kind of like subvert to subvert your feelings. Right before the Bacta tank situation with Vader, they have that old guy who walks in. He's wearing that robe, and it looks like he's a Jedi. And he says, "Director Krennic has arrived." I think that guy is Snoke. I think after Vader is killed, that guy still lives on Mustafar in Vader's castle, and Vader never comes back. And now that guy has that robe on. That's not just Vader's helper. He doesn't go just get Vader coffee and pizza. That guy's got a robe on. He's Vader's personal assistant, and I think that guy is learning how to use the Force. I think he's probably Vader's disciple or apprentice. And that guy has that ring from the Mustafar, the obsidian ring from Mustafar. I think that guy is Snoke. Alright, so let's just move on. So Luke sneaks up on Rey when she's sleeping, which is very similar to what he did with Kylo Ren. It means he doesn't learn his lesson. He's kind of like a nincompoop. And he does the same creepy thing. Luke Skywalker is flawed. He's not this quintessential superhero legend that we've made him out to be. He's just a human being with good and bad. And he's afraid, and he's conflicted, and his soul is split in two, just like Kylo Ren's is. He's just a human being with emotions. And that's the thing about Luke Skywalker. He was always emotional and always a loving, caring person. So he's not all good, he's not all bad, but he's trying to work on his own balance. And the Force is about balance. It's the balance of the Force. It's not just you have the Force, it's you have the balance of the good and the bad. You have balanced your good and bad. And there's a balance between Jedi and Sith. Without the Jedi, Sith will grow. Without the Sith, Jedi will grow. But if there's equal Jedi and Sith, there's a balance. There's a balance between Luke and Snoke, between Rey and Ren, between good luck and bad luck. between the rebels and the First Order. There's a balance. A balance is always between two things. It's never just the Force and just the Sith. That's a total imbalance. And if there is no Sith, then the light will rise. And if there's no Jedi, then the dark will rise. It's just the way that it is. The balance implies two different things, a relationship between two different things. The Force is in Kylo Ren, the Force is in Rey, the Force is in all of us. We can all use the Force. Finn is going to use the Force, and Poe is going to use the Force, and Paige uses the Force, and I've used the Force, and so the Force is something that all of us can have. All right, the next thing is a big stretch, but there's two different situations in this movie where people, aside from Jedis, at least that we think, say, "May the Force be with you." And I don't think that everybody in the Star Wars universe says, "May the Force be with you." I think only important people say, "May the Force be with you." And Finn says, "May the Force be with you." And Holdo also says, "May the Force be with you." I think that those are indicators that there's more to Holdo that we know, and there's more to Finn that we know, or at least there's more that will occur in the future. I think that Finn is going to be a Jedi. He's going to be one of Rey's disciples. Finn is going to be Force sensitive. I think that he has that same balance of good and bad, of rebel scum and stormtrooper, and he has that same good and bad that is kind of like flowing in Kylo Ren, in Rey, in Luke Skywalker, in everybody. So I think that Finn is the same thing as Rey. I think that he's going to eventually become part of the Jedi Order. Luke is controlling Rey and Ren's mind. There's no reason to think that if Snoke can bridge people's minds that Luke can't do it either. If they're both balanced, if Luke and Snoke are the doppelganger of each other, then whatever Snoke can do, Luke can do. Now it comes to the bridging of the minds. It's really curious to me that the first mind bridge ends immediately after Luke Skywalker comes out of the hut. He comes out of the hut, boom, everything is over. It could be the case that Luke was controlling their minds. And then as soon as he comes out of the hut, he says, "Okay, we're going to start our first lesson." It's too curious that right as soon as that first mind bridge ended, Luke Skywalker comes out of the hut and says, "Let's start our first lesson." So that to me made me start thinking, well, maybe Luke Skywalker is also able to bridge their minds, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So then I started thinking maybe the first lesson is actually don't believe everything you see. Don't believe everything you see in Star Wars, because it could be the case that they subverted your expectations throughout the movie. So maybe we have to just think about everything with like these symbolisms or whatever, or maybe I'm just going too far into something that's not even important at all. But it's more fun to do this than it is not to do it. So I believe maybe the first lesson should be don't believe what you see. All right, don't believe what you see with Luke Skywalker. Don't believe what you see with Snoke bridging the minds and all of that stuff. Don't believe what you see with the throne room scene. Don't believe what you see with Holdo not telling Poe the plan and everything. Don't believe what you see. The next thing is the lesson. The Force doesn't belong to the Jedi. Balance is everything. Balance is the Force. It's bring balance to the Force. It's not bring Force to the Jedi. It's always been bring balance to the Force. And the Force is this balance. It's the balance of Jedi and Sith. And there's got to be both. There's got to be Jedi so that there's Sith, and there's got to be Sith so that there's Jedis. There's got to be the balance between the two. Rey says that she had that image and she didn't see Luke. Luke is totally closed off from the Force, and she mentions that. Luke did this on purpose. When Luke killed his father and the Emperor, it leaves an incredible vacuum in the dark side of the Force. Now there's only Luke Skywalker. There's only the good side of the Force. And the pendulum is totally swung towards the good. Now there's no balance anymore. He's sad, he's depressed, he's conflicted. He didn't bring balance to the Force like apparently he was supposed to do. He brought a complete imbalance to the Force. And then what happened is he realized that not only is the balance in the Force so swung towards the good, that the dark side is going to rise to meet it. And it happened in his own family. And the dark is rising in his own family as a response to him destroying the dark side. So there's a balance. If there is no dark side, it will grow and rise to the light. Same thing, if there's no light, then the dark is going to rise to meet it. That's what Snoke says. So Luke Skywalker is shut off from the Force. If Luke Skywalker shuts himself off from the Force, then there's nothing to make the dark side of the Force get more and more powerful. If Luke becomes more powerful, then Snoke becomes more powerful, and it's like a never-ending like horse race. But if Luke shuts himself off from the Force, it keeps the dark side at bay, and it makes now a negative power in the Force, or a negative swing. The pendulum swings the opposite way, and now there's going to be some type of lightness, light force, something in the good side of the Force to grow and kind of join ranks with the dark side. So the longer he's shut off, the more powerful Rey is going to become in the light side. Chewie should have eaten the porg. I like the whole scene. It's kind of interesting. Gives Chewie a little bit of like some humor. He should have looked at the last porg, looked at the one he had in his mouth, and then just gone. Luke had this plan all along, and he realized that there was an imbalance in the Force that was starting to negatively affect his own family. He noticed that because he was the only one who had the light side, that Snoke started to become even more and more powerful and more powerful. And it's the case that like Leia and Han knew Snoke. They willingly let Ben Solo train from Snoke. So at some point, Snoke must have not been so bad and so evil. So it seems to me like as Luke continued to be so strong and powerful in the Force, Snoke became even more powerful. And then what happened is, in order to really get the dark side as high as and even with the light side, there was another vergence in the dark side. Ben Solo and Luke's family member, his own family member, started to grow in the dark side just so that dark presence could match Luke. Luke was creating Kylo Ren, but inadvertently. It was just happening because of the imbalance in the Force between the good and the bad. So Luke had this plan all along. He's going to shut himself off from the Force. He's going to go to Ahch-To. He's going to create another negative swing, or keep the swing in the direction of the dark side. And then because there's no balance now, he's shut off from the Force and there's only a dark side, there's got to be something from the light to rise and match the dark side. So Luke knew how the Force would work. He's probably studying the dark side and the good side and the Jedi temples and the books on Ahch-To, and he realized that there's no balance. All he's going to do is shut himself off from the Force, and somebody is going to grow strong in the Force. Luke was biding his time, and when somebody finally shows up to that Ahch-To, the hardest place in the galaxy to find, then that person is going to be strong in the Force. That's the only way that person is going to be able to find Luke Skywalker. And then when that person shows up, regardless of who it is, Luke Skywalker knows, okay, now I have somebody who is strong enough in the good side of the Force so that Luke Skywalker can match off with Snoke, and that other person who's strong in the good side can match off with Kylo Ren, and now we can establish some type of balance in the Force. So when Luke Skywalker is having that first lesson with Rey, this is one of the best parts of the whole movie. It's the part of the Star Wars saga that is actually makes Star Wars the most relatable to the person. It says, and the quote is, "Inside me, that same Force." And then there's a slow pan, and it just shows pretty much Rey's face right there. It says, "Inside me, that same Force." And this tells me that the viewer, that we also have the Force. And when you dig in and get super motivated and things seem to go on cruise control, that is the Force. That scene right there meant that it's not the Jedi alone who have the Force, but it's that Force. It's the balance of the good and the bad, the warmth and the cold, the destruction and then the life, and the destruction that feeds into the life. It's about that balance, and she had that balance in herself, and she also had that Force between the balance. And I think that, and Luke says, and how do you, and what do you have in you? And she says, I also have that Force. And she's really, not just is she Rey from nowhere, but and not only is she a Mary Sue, but she represents you in this movie. And you could replace Rey with any one of us, any one of the people who love Star Wars, And you can imagine yourself in her role. And that's why that scene is important. It's no longer a Skywalker or somebody who has midichlorians or who's a Jedi, who's gone to a Jedi temple and was a Padawan and who learned from the books. It's about if you have the balance of the Force and you can work that balance, then you are also sensitive to the Force. It's the first time that the Force became something that I could relate to. It used to just be something that was like legend, lore. But now I could potentially have the Force, and now Star Wars is something that we can all not only enjoy as a movie, but we can also feel empowered by it in this weird mystical way. I also think a key phrase in the Star Wars saga is from a certain point of view. It's said many different times, and I said this before, but maybe we see Star Wars from a Jedi or a light side perspective. Or maybe the executive producers are clearly using the good side, or they're clearly like have Jedi influences. But imagine if there was another way of looking through the saga from the Sith perspective, and not a Sith perspective that's tainted with the dark side and the evil. Like imagine if you could just think about everything from the Sith perspective, but the Sith were actually right the whole time. And maybe the Jedi would be wrong, and it would be dogmatic and vain, and it would be lacking compassion and things like that. So I don't know, I really just don't want to think that it's only the good that is good. It's the balance of the good and the bad that actually is what's good and what's healthy and what makes a real true system out of everything. Kylo Ren mentions to Rey, oh, there you go, you have that look in your eye, that look from the forest. Rey in The Force Awakens never ever smiles. She only smiles one time. It's after she gets done with that, the flying the Millennium Falcon with Finn, and I don't know how I did it. I never flown before. I never left the planet. And she smiles briefly there one time. There might be a couple of other times where she shares like a neutral face, but for the most part, she's got this really fierce, grimacy look in her expression. And I think that fierce look and what Kylo Ren is referring to is right. Rey is not all good. She's not really a Mary Sue. She has bad tendencies. She has good tendencies. She clearly resembles Anakin Skywalker, where he's got this mean look all the time. And I think that Rey is conflicted. And I think that she has that look in her eyes. She has anger. She has this dark side. And I believe that she's eventually going to turn to the dark. And they say that this is the end of the Skywalker trilogy, and this is the end of the Skywalker family. No way. No way they're going to end the Skywalker name. Either Rey is a Skywalker, and she was created by Darth Vader, or she is some type of clone or something like that, and Kylo Ren is going to turn back to a Solo who's kind of sort of like a Skywalker. So Luke knew that if he left the Force, a powerful light presence would have to rise, and he was right. And then when Rey gets to the island and she's using her staff, and then she looks down, picks up the lightsaber, and starts to use the lightsaber, and she seems to be really like kind of powerful with the lightsaber. First of all, Luke knew that even when she showed up to that planet in the first place, that she is Force sensitive and probably strong with the Force because she even found him in the first place. Then he sees that she's wielding the lightsaber and that she can hear those voices and go to the cave, and so he's like, who are you? Who are you? But he really knows what's happened. And the fact that she's able to wield the lightsaber, he actually gives like this kind of like relieved look as she's doing it. And to me, I think that whole scene kind of, it gives credence to Luke Skywalker's original plan. I shut myself off from the Force, and indeed what happened is this person grew strong in the Force, and I don't even need to train her. It's like nature or nurture. Like the Jedis used to be trained because of nurture. Teach. More Padawans, more people at the Jedi Temple, and this and that. And let's build Jedis to be strong and powerful. But the more Jedis there were, and the stronger and more powerful the Jedis got, the more the dark side was going to grow and rise to balance that out. So maybe instead of nature or nurture, maybe the Jedi disrupted the balance by training so many people. Maybe the Jedi nurtured too many and disrupted the nature. Luke eventually knew that because he was so powerful in the Force, and he realized that Ben Solo was starting to get so strong in the Force, that Luke Skywalker realized that he's going to need help in order to balance out the Force. There's Snoke, but there's also Kylo Ren, and he's going to need help. He's going to need some ray of hope. So he closes himself off from the Force, retreats back to the most unfindable planet in the galaxy, and bides his time. And when somebody finds him, he knows, and that's why when Rey got to the island. She says, "What are you here at the island for?" He says, "I'm here to die. I'm here. As soon as you come here, I'm going to kill Snoke, and then I'm going to close myself off from the Force." So as soon as Rey hands out that lightsaber, Luke knew, okay, this is the last act. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do it. And we're going to go all in on this last battle. And that's what he does. As soon as Luke reaches down and touches the ground and the rocks shake, Luke Skywalker is now back on the Force. All right, he sees that Rey is strong in the Force. She's going to be able to balance out Ren. And now Luke Skywalker comes back to the Force. The very first thing he does is he does a dark side technique to keep Leia alive, which means that Luke is truly involved in the dark side and the good side, but he's balanced. Now that Luke Skywalker is back in the Force, I have to assume that Luke Skywalker is going to control everything, the mind bridges, the throne room, Snoke's mind, etc. Snoke thinks he's seeing Kylo Ren's mind clearly, but he's not. He's blinded because Luke is using the dark side, and the dark side clouds everything. So I think that Luke is able to now use the light and the dark in balance to become this legendary Jedi. In one of the final scenes that Rey has with Luke Skywalker, Rey says, "Then he," which is referring to Ren, "is our last hope." And therefore, I think that the title of episode 9, or 9 and 10, I think they're going to split this movie up into 2 movies. And the big reveal is going to be that there's going to be a 9th and a 10th movie. And if so, I think that Darkness Rising or The Last Hope or Our Last Hope are potential titles for either of those movies. Yoda has already met with Rey prior to meeting with Luke. So Yoda already knew that the books were removed from the tree. And he already knew that Rey had all of the things that she's going to need. The girl Rey has everything that she needs. So I think that Yoda and Rey had already met somehow. Bridge 1 and bridge number 2 were Snoke's doing. The first bridge is when Rey shoots at Kylo Ren in the hut. The second bridge is with the water falling over the Millennium Falcon. I think both of those bridges were Snoke bridging their minds. I think the third bridge, where she tells Kylo Ren that he should put some type of cloak on or something like that, a cowl or whatever. Kylo Ren is unprepared for that mind bridge. I think that is Luke Skywalker bridging their minds. I think the last one, when Luke and Rey touch their fingers, I think that they realize that they're getting strong enough in the Force and they can bridge their own minds. And the proof that they can bridge their own minds is after Snoke is dead and gone and Luke Skywalker is shut off from the Force, Kylo Ren and Rey both bridge their own minds when Rey is standing in the Millennium Falcon. So they know how to do it. There's no reason why Rey can't be doing it and Ren can't be. There's no reason why Luke Skywalker can't be doing it. If there's a balance in the Force, anything Snoke can do, Luke Skywalker can do. So I think that Luke Skywalker is bridging their minds, and if that's the case, then Luke Skywalker can also be in their minds while they're in the throne room. So I think Luke Skywalker is manipulating everybody's mind. It could be. And he's specifically manipulating the mind of Snoke in the throne room. Snoke mentions Luke Skywalker twice in the throne room. He says, "Oh, I thought there was going to be a light to rise. I thought that light rising was going to be a Skywalker. I didn't know it was going to be you, Rey. And that Skywalker I thought was going to be Luke." So he mentions him there, and then Rey says something, and then Snoke gets pissed. He's like, "I'm going to go, after I kill you, I'm going to go to that planet. I'm going to find Luke Skywalker, and I'm going to kill him." Just the fact that Luke Skywalker is mentioned in the throne room at all means and symbolizes the fact that he's there. And Snoke doesn't even know it. Luke learned the ultimate Sith skill. That's the only Sith skill that we've been kind of introduced to in the movies that you can't learn from a Jedi. And I think that represents the fact that Luke Skywalker is so deep in learning the dark side and balancing the dark with the light that he knows how to do the most intimate of Sith skills and keeping the ones that he loves from dying. And it also means that Obi-Wan Kenobi was also doing it as well. So I think that Rey is created by Vader. I think that Rey is a virgin in the midichlorians. The whole reason that Vader became Vader in the first place was to learn how to create or save life from Darth Sidious. The entire time between Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi, Vader learned that skill, and I think that Rey is the next best thing to Amidala. And he made like this perfect almost copy or representation. I think that Rey has so many of Anakin Skywalker's characteristics. She uses his lightsaber. She's a pilot. She speaks languages. She's good at electronics. She doesn't even know how she does these things. So I think that she is a creation, a clone of Vader's, which is why she has no lineage. She's just herself repeated forward and iterations of herself backward. And that's why, like Anakin, she doesn't have any parents. And this, I think, is eventually going to get her to understand like that she doesn't even have parents. She's just a clone, and she's going to turn to the dark side. At least that would be a really interesting an interesting spin. So, like I said, the fourth mind bridge is Kylo and Rey. They figured out how to do it. Not only that, but they're powerful. And that's why Luke kind of comes in. He's like, no, don't do this. It's clearly not Luke controlling them. And as Rey is fighting Luke Skywalker, she has her own brief moment of it looked like she was like trying to strike down Luke Skywalker, similar to like what he did to his father. Even Rey has moments of darkness. She's not all good. She's not all bad. She's just got to find the balance and where she fits in this whole thing, where she fits in the balance. And then Luke Skywalker says, this is not going to go the way you think. I think that's foreshadowing. I think that refers to all of it. It's not going the way that we think. It's not just Snoke doing the mind bridges. It's not just Luke Skywalker being the powerful Jedi. It's not that Rey is going to be the light. It's not that the Skywalker trilogy is going to end and the name is going to end after this trilogy sequel. It's not going to be the case that Kylo Ren is the leader of this dark order or whatever. I think that it's not going to be as what we seem. And it's also the case that it's not the Jedi and the Sith. It's not what we think. It's not that the Jedi are all good. Nothing is all good. It's not that the Sith are all bad or all the Sith lessons are all bad. It's not going to go the way we think. DJ says it's all a machine. It's all a machine. A machine is a system. And there's a good definition of a system is when any organism is connected by any other organism. Any connection. It could be a mathematical operator. It could be pheromones. It could be a physical line drawn. It could be touch. It could be love. It could be anything. A system is, and the whole world is a system. The guy selling the ship, he wasn't good. He was selling to the good and the bad. In war is the good and the bad. You can't have war with only one side. You need to have two people. You need to have a system. Two people unbalanced creates a war. All right, so that whole system thing implies that a balance between the good and the bad, a balance of everything, a connection between everything is a system. So I think that as DJ, Finn, and Rose are cloaking their approach to Snoke's ship, there's another similar cloaking going on. That's when after Rey tells Luke that Kylo Ren is the last hope, she gets in the Millennium Falcon and she speeds off of Octu, and Luke Skywalker watches her. Well, that means to me that not like Luke Skywalker's like, okay, see you around, maybe I'll see you again sometime. He watches her, and as he's watching her, he's also making a plan to go across the galaxy. But he's going to go across the galaxy cloaked. He's not going to go physically, he's going to go mentally. And where is he going? He's going to the throne room. So just as Finn, Rose, and DJ are being cloaked on their approach, so is Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker cannot eventually strike down Kylo Ren, nor can he go and strike down Snoke. I have nephews and nieces, and I give them a play lightsaber, and they say, Uncle Daniel, I'm going to chop you down. Chopping somebody down with a lightsaber is cliche. You can't do that. And not only that, but chopping somebody down, chopping your father or your nephew down with a lightsaber, that's not going to make you legendary. It's going to make you even more conflicted. So Luke Skywalker can't do that. He's going to have to do something that is truly legendary, something no one has ever done. Like Rocky Balboa became a legend, and he lost the fight. Rocky became a legend. Rocky, that movie won Best Picture of the Year, and the guy lost. He became a legend because of his character, because of the things that he does to help people, not the way that he beat up Apollo Creed or whatever. He just became a legend because he's a good person. And that's what Luke Skywalker needs to do. He needs to become a legend because he does something legendary. So here's a quote. I can't take any more losses. Sure you can. You taught me how. Leia taught Holdo certain aspects of the Force. Leia was strong and has used the Force in the past. And she's so strong in the Force that she can keep herself from dying. But she can keep herself from dying, so maybe she even knows the dark side of the Force. It also appears as though they have some type of like romantic nature in their conversation. They share like some type of like holding the hands, and then afterwards they both say, "May the Force be with you." That's why I think that Holdo has a different backstory with Leia that involves the Force. And as Leia is kind of like taking off in the ship, she looks down at Holdo, and they have this kind of look. So that I think that Holdo has some type of like Force-sensitive background or something like that. So maybe that's why she became the leader or the general in Leia's absence so quickly. And then what happens is that Luke gets to the throne room, or they're in the throne room. And in the throne room, I mentioned that Snoke mentions Luke Skywalker's name 2 times without being prompted to do so. So that's like symbolic proof that Luke Skywalker's presence is definitely there. And even though he doesn't announce himself, I think he's there. And then Rey tells Snoke that you underestimate Skywalker. You underestimate Skywalker, Ben Solo, and myself. And I think that Snoke is. And she's telling the truth. You're underestimating Luke Skywalker. He's here. He's manipulating you as we speak, and Snoke falsely believes that he alone bridged their minds, and that Luke isn't bridging everyone's mind in the throne room. That Snoke's vision into Kylo Ren's mind is clouded by the dark side. The dark side clouds everything, and I think that ultimately Luke is using the dark side. I think that Luke Skywalker clouded Snoke's mind, so Snoke thought that he couldn't be betrayed, he could see everything that... And then all of a sudden, Luke Skywalker comes in and is like, no. I'm controlling everything. I'm in charge here. And now Luke kills Snoke. After Snoke is killed, all right, there is no longer balance in the Force. Once Luke comes back to the Force, there's balance, because Luke is balancing Snoke and Kylo Ren is balancing Rey. But once Luke kills Snoke, now there's no more balance in the Force. Now there's Rey and Luke, who are really positive on the Force, and Kylo Ren, who is negative in the Force. So as long as that happens, Kylo Ren is still going to get nastier and nastier until he's eventually as strong as both of them. So as soon as Snoke is killed indirectly by Luke Skywalker and part of Luke Skywalker's plan, Luke realizes that he needs to leave Ren and Rey to balance each other. They're true equals with the Force. That's why they broke the lightsaber directly in half. If like they're yin and yang of each other. And then if Luke is able to shut himself off from the Force, then it'll leave only Rey and Ren, which are balanced with each other. Neither one will get stronger or weaker with the Force. There'll be a true balance, and that's pretty much what the whole plan is. So I think that the reason why Holdo couldn't tell the plan is Holdo's plan from the very beginning was to charge up those transports, or whatever they call them, and commit suicide by flying the ship into Snoke's ship. So there's no way that Holdo could say, "Hey Leia, this is my plan. I'm going to commit suicide in 24 space hours," or nobody's going to buy into that plan. So I think that Holdo actually did the ultimate sacrifice, just like Luke is doing the ultimate sacrifice. She's sacrificing herself for the good of the universe and the balance of the Force, and I think that ultimately that's why she didn't pull the plan. After Snoke is cut in half, his upper body falls on the ground, but his lower body is still sitting on the throne in his left hand. Actually, his left hand is still on the controls. I think that that's an interesting thing. I don't know why his left hand remains on the controls, but maybe it just means that Snoke is not gone just yet. I think it's also interesting that Rey calls Kylo Ren Ben, and he answers to it. And just as Rey has negative tendencies, Kylo Ren obviously kind of answers to and admits that he has positive, good tendencies. Such the fact that he was not able to kill his father. Han Solo actually killed himself to make up for the lack of evil that Kylo Ren had, and he wasn't able to kill his mother either. So Kylo Ren is not all bad, and he's not all good. He's just unbalanced, as Snoke says. And Rey is not all good and not all bad. She's also unbalanced emotionally, and so she's conflicted as well. So I think that both of them are going to seek more balance or balance each other out, but Ben does have some type of good to him. So Rey and Ren are balanced, and Luke needs to complete the last part of his plan, which is to remove himself from the Force to maintain the balance between Rey and Ren. So if he can shut himself totally off from the Force, then Luke Skywalker and Snoke are gone, and it just leaves Rey and Ren totally balanced with the Force. So I think that he's going to make the ultimate sacrifice, and he's going to do it in a way that no Jedi has ever done before. He's not going to do it in a big blaze of a lightsaber battle. He's going to do it by doing a Force projection across the galaxy, something nobody's ever done, and become legendary. Legendary for not chopping his father down, not killing his nephew, but for using the Force in a way that nobody has ever used the Force, and defeating somebody through being passive. Jedis weren't passive necessarily, they used lightsabers, but Luke Skywalker is going to do the opposite. He's not going to use his lightsaber. He's going to throw his lightsaber aside. He's going to use his mind. He's going to use being passive instead of chopping somebody down, and he's going to truly become a legend. And then all that Kylo Ren has accomplished is nothing. He couldn't even kill his father. He wasn't even evil enough to kill his father. He's just a murdering, sniveling moron. Luke's appearance at the end is not real. It doesn't even look like Luke. Luke's hair is all tattered and he's got a big bushy beard. But in the end, the virtual appearance, the appearance that Luke wants everybody to know is that he's well kempt, right? He's got his dad's lightsaber. He's got the Jedi robe on. He wants everybody to know that he's still himself. If he doesn't die, there will be a very large positive presence in the Force. And there is no large dark side presence to balance him off. Therefore, something would be bound to emerge. Some dark Jedi presence would have to, or Kylo Ren would have to become even more powerful if Luke stayed alive. So the ultimate sacrifice is something that he did. He had to make sure that the balance of the Force is the most important thing. And without him, without his huge positive presence in the Force, then the dark side won't rise to meet him. So he's just got to sacrifice himself and leave the Rey and Ren balance in the Force. And because of that, because he's willing to do that, because he's willing to be passive, because he's legendary, and does a legendary thing finally, all right, he actually becomes a real legend and a real hero for the galaxy. He planned and manipulated the events in The Last Jedi from the very, very beginning. There was some luck involved, there was some good, and there was some balance, and the balance between the two, there was some light and dark, there was some Sith, there was some Jedi, there was some success and some failure, and in the end, between all of those things, there was the balance of the Force, and a true legend of Luke Skywalker and hope. May the Force be with you.
I don't dance now, I make money move. Say I don't gotta dance, I make money move.